Good morning. Welcome to my thought for the day. I'm back in Luke this morning, in Luke chapter 17. A story that has always puzzled me a little bit. It's a healing experience of Jesus. Let me just read it to you. On the way to Jerusalem, Jesus was passing along between Samaria and Galilee, and as he entered a village, he was met by 10 lepers who stood at a distance and, lifting up their voices, said, "Jesus, Master, have mercy on us." When he saw them, he said to them, "Go and show yourselves to the priests." And as they went, they were cleansed. Then one of them, when he saw that he was healed, turned back, praising God with a loud voice, and he fell on his face at Jesus' feet, giving him thanks. Now he was a Samaritan. Then said Jesus, "Were not 10 cleansed? Where are the 9? Was no one found to return and give praise to God except this foreigner?" And he said to him, "Rise and go your way. Your faith has made you well." So 10 people. I was thinking about it because we are approaching Easter. We're approaching the last week of the life of Jesus. And this incident happened fairly close to the beginning of the final week of the life of Jesus, as he was on his way going towards Jerusalem. And lepers, as we know, they were excluded from society because they were infectious and had terrible damage to their bodies from the leprosy and from injuries they received, because leprosy, I understand, deadens the nerves at the extremities and they hurt themselves without realizing it, and all sorts of things. But there were 10 of them, and they obviously were together. And it's probable that lepers lived in a community outside towns and cities. And he was on his way between Samaria and Galilee. So he was coming down from Galilee through Samaria, and that one of these 10 was a Samaritan. And living excluded from society, the Samaritan obviously was one of the group, and the group had joined together because they were lepers, whereas if they were well, the Samaritan probably wouldn't have been included in the group because they didn't mix, the Jews and the Samaritans. And Jesus told them, he didn't say, "I'm healing you," when they said, and they didn't even ask him, they just said, "Jesus, Master, have mercy on us." You know, the mercy of God is healing. That's a lovely thought, isn't it? The mercy of God is healing. And Jesus told them to go and show themselves to the priests. Now you might say, why were they asked to do that? Well, that is because that's what was stipulated in the law. If you had any kind of skin disease, it was the priests who would determine how serious it was, and would also determine if it had been healed. If it improved of its own accord, and you went, it was the priest that had to verify that the illness had gone and to allow you back into society. So that was a normal thing. They had to go and show themselves, but they had to go before they were healed. They had to go because Jesus told them to go. And so they did. Well, they had nothing. They did. And as they were on their way to the priests, which would have been at Jerusalem, so on the way to Jerusalem, they realized that the leprosy had gone. And I can see why 9 of them carried on, because they needed the verification of the priests for them to come back into society. And that would take at least a week, because the priest would look at them and say, "Yes, you are healed, but you have to still stay in exclusion for 7 days. Come back, and if nothing has changed and it's still healed, carry on." But it's always puzzled me that those 9 never came back to Jesus. But the Samaritan was so thrilled at the healing he'd received that he came to Jesus to thank him. And I think perhaps he was surprised that he was healed as well, because he was a Samaritan. And there was a lot of racism around at that time, a lot of exclusion. The Jews did not mix with Samaritans. And perhaps he thought, well, he was surprised that perhaps he expected he would not be healed because he didn't belong. He was an outsider. You know, the love of God and the mercy of God has no barriers. There is no one who is too excluded from society. There's no one who is too marginalized. There's no one whom God will not reach. And often it's the people who least expect God to be merciful who are the most grateful. You know, you remember the story of the woman who washed Jesus' feet, anointed Jesus' feet with perfume. Jesus said, those who have been forgiven much love much. But in reality, we have all been forgiven a great deal, a huge amount. But for some of us, the sort of things we've been forgiven are not big sins. We haven't robbed a bank. We haven't done any of the really dreadful things compared to what other people have done. And perhaps we don't value our forgiveness as much as other people do. But the truth is that without Jesus, we were all condemned. Without the love of God expressed in Jesus, we were all without hope in this world. He came back to give praise to God and to thank Jesus. And whatever we do, we should never lose sight of the fact that we have been forgiven an enormous amount. We have been blessed in a huge way. And we should never stop giving gratitude to God and to Jesus for what they have done for us. We don't deserve anything that God has given to us, but it's given to us. His mercy is given to us without limit. And gratitude, thankfulness, praise to God is the return, the only return we can give, really. And we shouldn't hold back our praise from God for any reason. We shouldn't say, well, I don't feel like praising God. It doesn't matter what you feel like. God is worthy of praise every moment of every day, and we should express it. That's my thought for the day. God bless you. Have a great day. See you tomorrow.